Welcome to Spiritually Raw. We expose and explore controversial truths, myths, and theories surrounding the spirit world. Guests include QAnon experts, investigators, debunkers, and skeptics of the supernatural, unexplained, and flat-out unimaginable. Content discussed on this show is not necessarily the opinion of the cast of Spiritually Raw, and topics quite often are for mature audiences only. This show is not intended to replace any medical, financial, or legal advice and is for entertainment purposes only. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride.
Hi, I'm Victoria Reynolds with Fearless and Free TV. I wanted to share with you real quick what HempWorks has done for me. Now, I've tried several, actually numerous CBD products over the last couple of years out of curiosity to see if any of them actually work because I'm already so high on life, if you will. And HempWorks products are the only ones that I've noticed a difference with. For me particularly, it's been the CBD with melatonin. I found that melatonin on its own doesn't do anything for me. Actually, I'm one of those backwards people. So melatonin tends to keep me awake. However, the CBD with melatonin has been great for helping me sleep. Also, the CBD with the curcumin has been great for navigating some pain that I have had for years in my neck and shoulders. And that has been helping as well. And I have to admit that I had taken myself off coffee, but I do like the HempWorks coffee. And I think it might also be because of the mushrooms that are in there. So I've really been enjoying my HempWorks products and also the other products that are on my daily choice because I'm a big fan of some of their other products as well, such as the essential oils. So I wanted to share that with all of you. If you're curious and wondering if HempWorks actually works, in fact, it does. Until next time, get bold, be fearless, and live free.
Hello, everybody. How are you? And welcome to Spiritually Raw. Thank you very, very much for your energy exchange with us today. As always, we hope you woke to the most miracle morning and are also having the most fortunate day today. We have a really good brother on for you today, Neil Gaur. April's going to tell you about Neil in just a moment. I do want to thank you very much for staying connected with us. And remember, the best way to find us is through our Telegram at Spiritually Raw. And then, of course, you can click on any of the links below. You'll be able to find us right there too. Also, hey, real quick before we do get started, we're getting more and more inquiries. I guess the energy's out there, and for those of you who are really wanting to connect and get yourself dialed into having your own show, reach out to us. The energy's in your favor right now to do this. There's at least that voice within that you got right now. It's a good time to do it. I can see my brother nodding to me, so I'm hoping he's agreeing with me, right?
And you do not need any experience. You do not need to be professional. You don't have to have a background in broadcasting. As long as you have a passion and a desire to want to elevate the consciousness of our planet, the rest is easily learned, and we will walk you through everything. It's a lot easier than most people realize, and it actually is fun.
Yeah. We're collective consciousness, everybody. So step up and do your part, and let's do it together. Get to the other side of this together.
And if so, we'll move consciousness, will elevate the energy and the consciousness a hell of a lot faster.
So more about Neil, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. I do want to just take a quick second, though. If you all can please take a quick little second and smash the like button. We would greatly appreciate it. And also, if you love the video, please do share the video. We would greatly appreciate it. Okie dokie, Neil Gaur, he's a philosopher, historian, researcher, spoken word artist, and founder of the Portal of Ascension, a conscious event production company that's worked with over 1,500 researchers, spiritualists, scientists, consciousness explorers, and more. Topics include the origins of humanity, the existence of extraterrestrial life, exposing the hidden truths, and exploring the nature of reality. He travels the world with his wife, Soul, facilitating gatherings and filming documentaries that are intended to empower individuals to reclaim their sovereignty, awaken to their full potential, and exploring in ways in which we can create unity and peace on earth.
All right,
How
Neil.
Wonderful does that sound?
Formally welcome, brother. That's good to hear.
It sounds like a nice life.
That's one out of the resume too. That's
Sure.
You got quite the eclectic journey here that you got going on there. We're raised as an Hindu. How did you really gravitate? How did you connect to this work that you're doing based on the beliefs and the heritage that you've grown up there in the East?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because a lot of before I go back in time, let me talk about right now that a lot of the beliefs and spiritual practices in this community, even disclosure, even ancient history community, if you can call it that, has a lot of things that are similar to, Hinduism and Vedic awareness in regards to meditation, yoga, mantras, and all that. So I actually didn't even connect the two worlds together. And until I became awoken to all this information, then I started realizing that there was a lot of similarities. But yeah, I was raised Hindu and I just kind of did what I was told. I didn't really have any direction in what I was doing or have any end game belief. I would think that people go to church and go to see God because they're thinking about, what is the end result of what they're doing is they're sending this energy to this God, this entity, and they're worshiping. I sung bhajans, which is Indian hymns. I was there was a lot of Indian ceremonies as a child, and I was there as the kid doing the rituals and ceremonies, and everybody thought it was so cute. But I didn't really think of the end result, which was God. And my wife just asked me 3 weeks ago, you were doing all of this spiritual stuff. Did you ever think about God? And I was like, no, I really didn't even think about God. Not even until 10 years after I became awoken to spirituality did I even think of God as an entity, right? So even though I was in this whole world, I had a question of, I just felt something was off, something was disconnected. I just continued moving forward. I moved to the US when I was 12, 13 years old from England. And I was, went to school here, high school here. And then when I graduated, I started writing a lot of poetry. I'd started my senior year of high school, but I started writing even more poetry and then go in my friend's studio, rapping, freestyling. And I would say all these universal concepts that I guess were a part of my DNA since birth, which was who are we? Where are we from? I would put things with different words in there, like black holes, planets. I created a short story on different planets and beings from other planets and how they came to Earth. And this is before I even really was into all this information. And as I was doing that, I started doing some research, and pretty soon went directly into some ancient alien information, ancient civilizations, and then also the extraterrestrial connection. And I started dissecting some of these scriptures and realizing that there were some universal concepts in here that were advanced sciences that come from civilizations that we thought were more primitive, but they had this awareness of something that we're only now starting to rediscover. And there was a lot of smoking guns, right? And I can probably do a whole show just talking about all of them, but let's just speak about one of them. For example, the 2-scale map of the solar system on one of the Sumerian tablets of creation, thousands of years old, right? It has the solar system right there, and it has all the planets in the exact same location in comparison to the other planet, in relation to the other planets, right then and there, right? So obviously they knew something about how our universe looked and where the planets were. So these kind of things made me realize that, whoa, everything that we've been told in regards to ancient civilizations may actually be incorrect. And then soon I found out that a lot of these this source materials that talk about star beings was the actual material that other religions later in human history took from and then made their own scriptures from it. It's almost like the text where everything came from, even though there's probably even a text that predates that. So I wanted to find out what the root of all religion was. And my question was, to answer your question more concisely, was why is it that all these religions have similarities and can track their origins to an even more ancient civilization, but we only speak about what makes us different rather than what makes us similar, even though there's so many connections within it all. And a great example would be Hinduism, and Krishna and Christ are the exact same person. They have the exact same story, but most people think of Christianity as a monotheistic religion, that it's its own thing that evolved separately, and Hinduism being this pagan religion that they don't have any connections to. But if you start dissecting it, you realize there's all these similarities there, even within, even within the Old Testament, even the wars that I spoke about in the Mahabharata has this connection to that. So that brought me back to looking at Hinduism from another perspective, from a scientific perspective. As a linear mathematical kind of person, I started looking at and seeing that, whoa, meditation, vibration, frequency. This is what they're talking about. They're saying, how can we harmonize and utilize quantum physics, the subatomic world, to harmonize our frequencies in order to achieve kind of some states of enlightenment or a different state of consciousness? And that's what bridged the two worlds for me. Religion, ancient civilization, and science started coming together, and I realized spirituality is just a science that we're now rediscovering.
That's a good point.
You know, when you said you were awake and it took you almost 10, your wife had mentioned to you about that, and then you said you'd been awake and it took you almost 10 years later after you'd been awake to find out. What do you think that journey was? Was it that you weren't, during that 10-year period when you quote unquote became awake, what was that time like that got to the point where you found out about some sort of God? Would it be like a God consciousness more like that you're referring to, or would you look at it as God as a being?
Yeah, I've never, and I still don't. This is probably the first show that I've openly actually like had a conversation about God as an actual term, because the reason why is that for those 10 years, I just never thought God was any individual entity sitting there on a throne, you know, like how it's kind of been portrayed, that this all knowing figure. I believe we're all particles of the God consciousness, and we're all just reflections. But I mean that on a literal perspective, not figuratively. I mean, like, we're literally, like, God is the body of everything that exists and all energies and frequencies. So since that was the case, God had too much of a connotation to me that in my own mind was kind of a negative connotation that directly connects to organized religion. And that's probably because of what organized religion has done over the last couple thousand years. I had such an aversion to it that I didn't want to go into speaking about it. And a lot of people, even people I still work with, can't even really say the word God or even concentrate on that. They'll say source, right? They'll say universal energy, because God has that connotation connected to this individual entity. So that was for me for some time. When I was in a polarized reality where I was like, no, this is what we are. We aren't this, right? We're not this separate God entity, but we're everything. I'd have the aversion towards it. But as I did some more of my inner work and healing, and I kind of lost I guess the energy dissipated in regards to me having that judgment towards that term. And now I will utilize it very rarely, because I don't feel like I need to as much, but if I utilize it, I'll kind of explain what I mean. And I mean by God, I mean like all of creation, everything that exists. I don't pretend to know what the God consciousness actually looks like, right? It could be anything. I'm in this world of amnesia. I don't have complete remembrance of my past lives and ET lives, so I'm not going to exactly know. But I do think that we are all part of this one energy, and that oneness is the God consciousness.
Do you think that's why a lot of people are atheists?
Well, I became atheist. I called myself an atheist Hindu when I was in 2001, 2002, because like the way I looked at it was that
an atheist Hindu.
Yeah, because I did everything I was told, but I had no real belief, right? So I'm technically Hindu, because what makes you Hindu right now becomes rites and rituals, right? Even though there is no way to convert into Hinduism, and that comes from an ancient Vedic awareness of the fact that from the Rig Veda, for example, it says there are many pathways to the same destination, one of my favorite quotes. And that's in relation to why you don't convert people into your religion, is because every pathway leads to the same destination. And it's just different religions and things based on your culture and time.
Isn't that interesting?
And your ability to be able to understand it, whether it be the dialect and different
exactly.
parts. Yep.
The Hindu religion is there's many paths, right? In the Christian religion, it's one and only one path.
Yeah.
So they're totally opposite ends of the philosophy spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So no wonder people are so freaking confused.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because if most Indians that you ask and you say, does your scriptures talk about Christ? They're probably going to say no. That's because most Hindus have not actually read their own scriptures. And there is actually Christ is actually spoke about in Indian texts, and there's another like kind of like a gospel from North India, I guess, that actually talks about his life in India. And then there's the Urantia book that isn't from India that talks about Jesus's life in India. And it looks like the first 300 years of Christianity, during Gnosticism, Gnostic Christianity before it was phased out, was almost like Hinduism minus the dogma equals Buddhism. Okay, mm-hmm. But Buddhism, not in the religion. Buddhism is in the spiritual practice of it, because Buddha never wanted to create a religion. So what Christianity was Hinduism minus the dogma, the gods, the deities, all this stuff, and the basic principles. So if you look at early Christianity for the Gnosticism, for example, and you look at the Gnostic Bible, it has all these universal concepts in there. Meditation, there's the book of love, right? There's the book of reincarnation, right, in the Gnostic text. So Christianity doesn't even believe in that. So that goes to your point of they're two separate. But then if you look at the original text, they're actually overlapping.
Do you think Buddha and Jesus, or Jesus and Krishna, are reincarnated versions of one another?
I don't know if they're reincarnated versions of another, but I do believe that they are the potential of a human to be at that liberated state, you know? So like whether there's so much, I'm really deeply immersed into understanding Christ and his reality and if he existed, and I've spent hundreds of hours on it, and I can tell you without a reasonable doubt that I'm still confused. You know, because there's too much info about it. Like there's a lot of people that give me info that Christ exists, but there's a lot of legitimate info that either he didn't exist or most of the story around his life was completely fabricated by Constantine and a few other people in order to make sure that the Roman Empire would still maintain control, almost like a complete hijacking of this information. So maybe Jesus existed. He was kind of like Buddha, taught meditation techniques, learned from the Buddhists, like it says in many ancient texts, was teaching people how to liberate themselves. And then as time progressed and the Roman Empire realized that, you know, Christianity is kind of taking over this awareness and people are becoming liberated, just like many other kings from India that literally banned Buddhism because of the liberation potential that people were getting from it. So like, then he kind of created the Council of Nicaea. They wrote down all of these gospels. They took out hundreds of gospels. There was hundreds of gospels. There was only a few of them remained. And they wrote entire sections. Like there's evidence to suggest that the crucifixion of Jesus was written in 325 AD, 300 years after his existence. So what's real, what's not, it's lost to time, really. And I think that when you get to a liberated state like Buddha, you might be able to know it fully.
True. The one thing I do want to tag on real quick, though.
You got a lot of questions for me, don't you?
I got so many. I probably won't even get to the ones I wrote.
I'll be back.
The one thing that does make sense to me with Jesus and the missing years, that there's a high probability if he went anywhere, he went to India to learn the Vedas and to study with the real gurus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the scripture actually says in the Urantia book, actually has this whole half of the Urantia book is about Jesus in India, and it talks about the kid that he was there to tutor and how he actually discovered Buddhism and meditation while he was there. And if you look at Christianity, even the rosary bead, right, the rosaries, that's actually the mala bead from meditation in Buddhism.
Right, that's true.
That's conventionally accepted information.
Right.
So it's not like some fringe element right there. So there's a lot of similarities and connections for sure.
You know, I want to get into if you can help get some misconceptions or clarification on the thought process, because when people take a look at the Hindu religion, they think, you know, oh, there's like 1,000,001 gods and goddesses and this for this, this for this. I would like to get your clarity on that a little bit, or your interpretation on that. But before I do that, I do want to tag on, or I caught something you said, and I wanted to get a little bit of clarification on that from you, Neil. You mentioned my past life and my ET life.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain to me about the ET life when you put those two together like that, what you were referring to?
When I say past life, I meant like past lives on Earth, right? But let me say what I said first, though. I said in this planet of amnesia, which means not completely remembering all the incarnations we had. Now, I like to verify everything with facts. And to me, other lives have been verifiably proven. And just go onto YouTube and type scientific evidence for reincarnation, and you're going to be inundated with information based on mainstream documentaries now that have kind of like, you're going to have to be like, whoa, something's going on here. So we can quantify that existed, but we can also know the fact that if I had all these lives, I don't really truly remember them, right? Some people do, some people claim to do. And even if they do, they might remember the people in it, but it's not like they remember their full life like you have in this life. So when I'm saying past life, I'm talking about this world, this earth, a reincarnation. When I'm talking about extraterrestrial lives, is why would we be limited to just this planet of incarnation? From my experiences, from my research, we probably had lives on multiple planets. But now I'll add a little caveat to that whole thing, is that time is a linear construct only within our planet and our distance from Earth to our sun, right? So even if linearity exists outside of our Earth, our form of linearity is only our distance from our Earth to our sun. As soon as you step outside of our atmosphere, you no longer have that same construct. So if you go outside of linear time, many ancient civilizations and other people have said that you go into secular time, and then the further back you go into time and the higher in dimension, higher is still a human construct, but let's just use that, the higher in dimension you go, the more you transcend the linearity of time. So as you transcend that time, time as we know it doesn't exist and becomes very fluid, and could even become non-existent in the realm of space, just space without time. So if that's the case, past lives and ET lives are always simultaneously happening, which gives us the potential to tap into it, because all things happen in one moment. And that right there is probably another 2-hour talk of why would I even say that, right? So I guess does that answer your question? Talking about life.
Basically, in a nutshell, if I got what you just said, that we are living multiple simultaneous lives all at the same time.
Yeah, and then to throw in some science there is that even mainstream scientists say that their parallel dimensions most likely do exist, and that there's a version of us living in all these parallel dimensions, that maybe I made a left turn instead of a right turn, and every time I make a choice, another parallel version of that just splits off. So infinite realities. So if we're just talking about this universe and this dimension and my lives and past lives and incarnations, that's just one component. But the fact that we now believe there's a multiverse theory and that we exist in all these realities is that there's just an infinite version of ourselves experiencing everything, which goes back to the original intention of source, God, consciousness, whatever, was to experience itself into multiple forms. So it would just make sense that every type of experience probably does exist.
When you put it like that, it actually does make sense.
And it makes the ride a lot more fun if you think about it that way. It really does. What do you think?
Is that deja vu?
Well, that's a good question. But do you think that the multiverse lives, Neil, from what you know, is there a possibility of them ever meeting? You meeting yourselves in other timelines? And what would that even look like? Would it be just a conversion of how did I know this, or would it be there a possibility of a physical meeting?
And is that feeling of, that was weird, I just had deja vu, is that where they're crossing?
So okay, let me answer the deja vu one first, because it ties into this. Is that what I've heard from channelers, like a lot of people, lots and lots of people, is that deja vu is you remembering you laying out this moment before you incarnated. So it's like basically, if time doesn't exist, that even what I'm about to do and say in 5 minutes is already there and already happening, waiting for me to tap into it, right? Because parallel realities exist, infinite parallel realities. So if infinite parallel realities exist, everything I could ever say already exists. So therefore, everything is predetermined. However, if every single possibility exists, everything is free will at the same time, right? So we're completely in a paradox. And what my friend Brad Johnson, who channels Adronis, likes to say is that predetermined free will is what it is. So it's like we have the illusion of free will, but it's not an illusion because every reality exists. So when you have deja vu, it's you remembering, you having those brief moments where you're in that like flow state where you completely are aware of the fact that this already has happened.
It's really cool. Is there any way to, because it doesn't happen very often, and when it does, it's like the closest feeling that you can get to a super higher consciousness, like in a split second. Is there any way to access that feeling more frequently?
Okay, yes. So let me answer the one distinct, though, the combining of the different parallel versions, and then we'll go into your question of if we can be in that flow state more. So the
organized.
I'm like, he's singing better than we are.
I'm like clocking those into my head because these are great questions. Yeah, so like you might have to remind me though. So I do believe that we can have the technology to shift into other dimensions, whether it's a parallel dimension or whether it's a dimension within your multiverse or a parallel dimension that's like a mirror multiverse. Because a parallel dimension is like a mirror multiverse that you're doing something different and some things happen differently. Whereas a multiverse that is not a parallel dimension is just another universe that has completely different laws of physics, different people, different entities, the universe of energy. So that's probably real as well. What we've shown now and CERN, a lot of people have wondered what's happening at CERN. Well, this is one thing that they figured out, is that when they bombard these photons together, a particle escapes. I think that's what they've been calling the God particle. But when the particle escapes, it escapes out of this dimension and they don't know where it goes. After years and years of studying it, they realized that this particle is actually escaping to a fifth dimensional reality.
Whoa.
So what is happening when two light particles are colliding is that the output of the energy that's colliding is creating a mini portal, making that little particle escape into a fifth dimensional reality we can no longer perceive, but still exist within 3D because everything above dimension includes all the lower dimensions, but it's just at a frequency range that we can't perceive because of the bandwidth limitations that we have. So we do know that we can escape into different dimensions on a micro level, right? And what happens usually is we start with the micro and then we realize we can do it on the macro. For example, they've made subatomic particles bilocate, be in two places at the same time, right? That's conventional quantum physics. So what happens if we can take that technology into a higher Newtonian physical level? Can we do that with ourselves? So in theory, and proven now, I would say, and from the fact that this UFO report and all these sightings are showing that there's physics that we can only theorize about that is actually being utilized right now. So we can do that within this universe. I would say that there's a potential to go to parallel realities because I think at this point, I think everything is possible and we can get to states of consciousness where we can do that. Now, in regards to if you see another version of yourself, well, the grandfather paradox, which is that you see yourself in a parallel reality and then your universe collapses, which is like what all movies kind of show, is like, don't find yourself, don't look at yourself. If you see yourself, don't engage, right? There's been a paper that was just released 3 months ago from physics, in mainstream conventional physics paper, that has said that they have now, from their research with the subatomic world, is that when paradoxes occur through like time travel, and they believe that the universe goes, the universe plays out in a way in order to correct that paradox. So even if you saw yourself in a past life, it wouldn't collapse it. Something else would happen. For example, if you were to go in your past life and kill someone that was responsible for something occurring, other things would happen in order to make that end result still occur, that the universe has this corrective process. Now, in regards to how they figured that out and why they released that paper, you would have to go into their research to really figure out why they're saying that. So I feel that we can do that. We can jump into parallel realities, and I don't think that it would be detrimental to our existence if we can do it from a state of consciousness, higher vibration.
From your perspective, do you think, are we living the same life? Like, would I still be married to Jay? Would we still have Alex? Would I still have the same parents? Or is it a totally different life altogether?
I would say that, well, if there's parallel realities, there's probably infinite realities in which you are together and infinite realities that you're not,
Because it's your thought, it's your thoughts that are just literally just constantly creating it, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then there's probably a reality that your parents, they waited another year to have a child, right? And that DNA and the makeup didn't make you, but your parents existed and they have a completely different child because it was a year later.
That's wild.
You know what I'm saying? Because parallel realities exist. This is just what they're theorizing on, right? So we're going into what mainstream people are theorizing on right now. And the reason why they're doing that is because they're doing tests like at CERN and with the subatomic world, and they're realizing how matter and how particles actually exist. And what's occurring is we're realizing that the subatomic world basically disproves the atomic world. They completely contradict each other.
Mm-hmm. Your passion and the science behind it. When someone, that you hear this a lot from people, Neil, when someone says, "Okay, God, I know you. I can't put my finger on it. I know you. I know." Where's that coming from? From what your feeling is on it? When people are experiencing that level of, I just can't get over the fact that I know this person. Where do you think that comes from?
I think that this is more of a stage than even Shakespeare thought about. Like it's like straight up that almost every single person you interact with has some sort of contractual agreement in order to give you this movement to here. And it's like it's like a puppet show that we're the masters of. And that, so I feel a lot of times when you do that, there are people that you've met in other lives, or that are maybe not even someone that you met, but some sort of guide, some sort of messenger that is supposed to say something in order to shift your perspective to take you down another route. There's the law of non-interference in regards to higher dimensional entities coming here and directly affecting our consciousness. The prime directive, right? The law of non-interference from Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry went to channeling events on ETs. He got all this information from there. That's documented as well. So like, and because of that, the only way to have a direct effect is to incarnate on Earth and actually affect people on Earth. Another example of that is Dolores Cannon. When she was doing hypno regressions on people, she started realizing that after the 40s, after the first atomic bomb, that there was a call out to the universe, and all these people that weren't even into ETs were saying the same thing during using her method. And what they were saying was that there was basically a call out to the universe after the atomic bomb went out in order for volunteers to come to Earth and to make some change on Earth. But the only thing is they couldn't have direct effect. So the only way they could affect Earth is by incarnating into a human and hopefully remembering who they were so that they could have that effect on the planet. So, and this is from someone that was a hypnotherapist that wasn't into any of the stuff that we're into. She was like, what is going on here? Why are people telling me this? And why does everybody have the exact same voice? That was the trippy part. There was the subconscious speaking, which was them. And then all of a sudden, when she went deeper in the subconscious, it was the same voice coming out of everybody, saying like, it was like this universal, it was like the collective consciousness of humanity, really speaking. So I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think that answers.
You're good, man. It's just fascinating to I know you just compartmentalize. We're trying to get all that years of knowledge, man.
Yeah, 45 minutes.
Yeah. Give us the clip notes, right? But you're awesome, man. Hey, I want to get back to, before we move on in this, I want to get back to my one question, because I didn't want to leave anybody hanging on that one. The concept of the gods and goddesses in India, for example. And you pray to this person for that, or you pray for this for that. You know what I mean? This is the wealth, this is the health, this is the protection for my family. And then there's the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, the Trinity of sorts, if you would. Is that the right way of doing that? I mean, is there anything to that where they're actually saying, or is there anything to that, whether it be manifesting something more appropriately by saying, let me focus on the goddess of wealth, if you would? Is there anything to the science behind that, going to one before you get to the master goddess?
Yeah.
We'd like to share a story. While it may sound fictional, it's very real and happening right now in front of our very eyes. It's called The Great Awakening. Our sisters and brothers that come on Spiritually Raw are doing everything to help expand global consciousness, and in many cases putting everything on the line to share their messages about what's happening around the world for the greater good of humanity, while exposing the truth of the deep state and the dark forces behind it all. We are living in the most unbelievable times. Some may even say biblical, scary for many and yet exhilarating for others. Together we are taking part in getting everyone acclimated to the Great Awakening process and the exciting new discoveries that lie ahead. The sad part is many of our amazing guests are being heavily censored, socially shamed, and outright banned on many platforms for exposing the truth and piercing the veil. By becoming a viewer, you bring your powerful energy towards this global movement of other truth seekers. If you're resonating with our show, please let us know by hitting the like button, sharing, subscribing, turn on the notification, and leave some comments. Together, we will turn the universal key to global harmony and create a unified world. And remember, tune in often, tell all your friends, and most importantly, may all your dreams come true. Thanks, and God bless Patriots worldwide.